today we have Janet Murray back on the podcast. It's lovely to have you back, Janet.
Thanks so much for having me, and I hope I'll be able to introduce myself better. Last time, I think I was so shell-shocked by everything that had happened. You asked me what I did, and I was like, "I don't know what I do. I don't know what to
Who
say."
am
So I'm
I?
hoping
What's my name?
I might be a bit better this time anyway.
Okay, would you like to introduce yourself then for those who didn't see the last interview that we did?
So I'm Janet, and what am I calling myself nowadays? I've just updated my socials to write a campaign strategist, marketing strategist. I'm a former national newspaper journalist, and in February this year, my life and my business was turned upside down because I committed the heinous crime of making a video in which I said I didn't like the phrase pregnant people. All hell broke loose. My business, my livelihood was pretty much decimated overnight, as tends to happen to women who speak out about their sex-based rights. So I'm definitely still in rebuild mode. And then in June, I got diagnosed with breast cancer. Couldn't have had better timing. And yeah, so 2025 has been a challenging year, shall we say. But when we spoke
I
last
can
time, I
see
think
that again.
it was just after the pregnant people thing, and I was just getting my head round, like, having my business and my life decimated and getting used to being called a Nazi and a bigot and a transphobe on the regular. And now I think that was probably back maybe in April time, I think it was. Obviously, since then, I've been diagnosed with breast cancer, I've been having treatment for that and thinking about my rebuild. Something that maybe we can talk about later is I want to write a book, or I'm in the process of starting to write a book called Please Don't Share My Name, which was basically inspired by all of the messages that came into my various inboxes and continue to come into my various inboxes from women who, when they were watching me get called a nigget, a bigot, um, a transphobe, a turf. Don't cut that out of don't clip that out of context. And all the names that we get called far right. You know,
Yeah, I have to
when you
say
know what a
nigget's a
woman
new
is.
one.
Nigger, yeah, that's a new one, isn't it? Yeah, don't
Bigot
clip
or
that
a
out of
Nazi,
context.
but not a nigget.
A nigger, that actually could be a new term that they haven't called me yet. But yeah, so my inboxes were just inundated by mainly women, but also some men saying, I totally agree with you, or I agree with you, but I cannot speak up because I'm afraid I'll lose my job, or my family won't speak to me again, or all my friends will cut me off. There were some people who had actually already experienced problems at work and had been warned and were just kind of trying to hang in there because they had a family, and bills to pay. And I was screenshotting all of those messages and anonymizing them and sharing them on my Instagram stories and putting them in the highlights, and I'd created quite a library of that. Perhaps something we could talk about today is like the next stage of my cancellation is then my Instagram account got taken down, which is another thing that can happen to women who speak up. We could talk more about that. But basically, yeah, so 2025 has just been an absolute nightmare. I've been cancelled, my business, livelihood's been decimated, being diagnosed with breast cancer, but I'm still here and I'm still smiling. And there's also been lots of good things as well. I've reconnected with a lot of really great people. I've connected with lots of new people, and I still know what a woman is, and I'm still talking about it. So
Yeah.
yeah, just I hope that's a better intro than next time. Still a bit rambly, but
Yeah, it was
last
very
time I should say.
long.
I'll say next time. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, so one of the questions that come into my mind when you are talking is how come you got cancelled but not all women do? And I'm wondering if that's because of the industry you're in.
Yeah, so my industry was kind of like online marketing. So I'd built up a business bizarrely around a planner, like unexpected business. I was a journalist for many, many years, best part of 20 years. And I was a school teacher before that, but I kind of accidentally fell into online digital marketing and ended up building up this whole like £500,000 business. Turnover was at one point around this planner and these online education resources. And I do think those kind of industries are particularly bad, if you like, when it comes to gender ideology, but also just being intolerant to people having different views. And actually, what came to mind when you were talking then, as we're talking now, is that the poet Kate Clancy this week, she's had an apology from her publisher. Her life was basically destroyed because she who wrote this book, which was very acclaimed at the time. It won the George Orwell Prize, which was about her experience of teaching children poetry from multicultural backgrounds. And then everyone thought it was brilliant at first. And then some people decided that actually it was racist and just turned her life upside down to the point where she considered suicide. And so when you asked me that question, it made me think about other industries that have been particularly captured. And I'd say that, creative industries, I think that's generally where you're more likely to get people. There's some research around, isn't it, that people who are so, the most well educated can often be the most what's the word? I don't know, likely to be taken in by kind of crazy theories. And certainly I think sort of well educated middle class people tend to dominate those professions, and I think that's possibly why I got cancer. But also I listened to a podcast with Kate Clancy the other day. It was on the Unheard podcast with Freddie Sayers, and she was so generous about what these people did to her. She got the usual, all the threats, the nasty emails, messages, online reviews, people bitching her about her online, and from the sounds of things, like defaming her. But she was really generous about people, and she said, I feel like they must be hurting too. But the trouble is, once you've done that to somebody, you've got onto a ledge that's so high that you can't get yourself back down again. And I often think that about the people who've been particularly instrumental in my cancellation, as it were. I sometimes literally lie awake at night and think, surely they must know that that's not right to do that to a woman, that it isn't right to pile on a woman and cause her to lose her livelihood and try and destroy her reputation for saying that they don't like a phrase. Like, surely, but Kate Clancy was saying that it's just like you've climbed so high, and you have to dig in, and you then have to kind of make yourself believe the story. So I don't know. I know you've spoken to lots of women who've been through this, but I don't know if that kind of resonates with you at all.
Yeah, it doesn't. I don't think I've ever seen anyone back down, apart from actually what's happened to me. So I haven't been cancelled nearly as badly as you have, but they did try. So I was poking some TRAs on LinkedIn. And in the end, 4 of them complained to my professional body for counselling. And although the complaint was outside the complaints procedure, because the complaints for this professional body are supposed to be for clients that you're working with, actual clients, not even potential clients, and none of them were. They suspended me, and then so I got the Free Speech Union involved, and they unsuspended me. So they lifted the suspension but kept the complaint open to give these people who'd complained the opportunity to go to the police. And they said that if the police had got involved, then they would reinvestigate. Well, the police did get involved, but I think once they realised where I was in the country, because it was Kent Police, which is miles away from me, I think they realised it was too much trouble, so they dropped it.
Mm.
And then the latest thing that's happened is that the professional body had to prompt them, is this complaint closed now? And it is, and they've kind of backtracked, but they haven't apologised because they know that they're in the wrong. And they've said
Yeah.
they're going to look into like improvements and stuff, but yeah, I'm debating whether I should put in an actual complaint about what they've done, because it's not right and I don't want it to happen to someone else. I want
Exactly.
women to be able to speak.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just what a waste of police resources and time,
I know.
and, you get your mobile phone stolen, you get your bike stolen, or I
And they
heard the
do
other day
nothing.
they don't even come out if you get your car stolen these days. And it's like, but they somehow seem to be able to find the time and resources to
Hmm.
police what people
So they
say.
were
It's just bizarre.
investigating me for harassment. It was interactions on LinkedIn. That isn't
Yeah.
harassment. It's
No.
like you're getting done for harassment for being social on social media. But yeah, I haven't seen many people back down.
No. Well,
They
I was
just dig
watching this
in.
morning, as we're recording this, Graham Linehan, the comedy writer, who's obviously been a big sort of you know, tour de force in terms of women's rights campaigning, whatever. But he's got this thing about Victoria Coren, the TV presenter, and he keeps going back to her. And I think it was something to do with she had a trans contestant on, I think it was a program that she has, a quiz show or something. And was saying they were the first woman to do X, Y, and Z or whatever and didn't challenge them. I think that's the story. Correct me if I got that wrong. But he keeps going back to her. And we were talking about it in one of my women's rights WhatsApp groups earlier. And although I think it's important to point these things out, I'm not sure that I think when people just dig in, don't they, is kind of what I'm getting
Mhm.
to, I think. I'm not sure how many people I think if people are gonna change their mind, they probably genuinely have to come to their own conclusion through their own research and I'm not sure. I mean, maybe it has worked, I don't know, but, I was kind of watching that thinking, "Is she probably even more convinced she's right now?" Because obviously it's not
Yeah,
just
that's
one
what people
person, usually
do. They
people
dig in
join in,
more.
don't they? And so I don't think I've ever challenged anyone online, maybe once, I don't know, no, maybe I haven't. Like, if I see somebody expressing a view that I don't agree with, I just kind of leave them to it. And if something's obviously, if it's really egregious, then you can point it out, but I do feel like people just dig in, like, because we live in a time where people I had to say sorry, I'm going slightly off topic, but I had to say sorry to Owen Jones the other day, which, like, really hurt me. But
I bet.
yeah, I know, but I was wrong. So I quote tweeted something he said. I made a comment about something that he hadn't done, and I was wrong. When I went back and looked at it, I'd missed something, and actually, he had, and I could have dug in, and I could have, like, made the point, well, we all know what you're like anyway, whatever. But I am just one of those people. I was just like, when you're wrong, you're wrong. You just have to say it, don't you? But I think that's quite unusual, isn't it? I
Yeah, it
think
is.
this
It
well,
takes
this
a
is
lot
your
of
thing, isn't it? As a counsellor, like, people's
yeah,
psychology is like it's really hard to admit you're wrong,
yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah. I think it takes a lot to be able to say, "Oh, actually, I got that wrong,"
Yeah. It
because
hurt
it
me
makes you feel
bad to
silly,
have to
doesn't
say
it?
sorry to Aaron Jones, but I was wrong,
Yeah.
like, factually, I was wrong, and I just said
Uh-huh.
it, and then I had all of his horrible people piling on me and demanding that I delete the tweet, but I thought, "Well, actually, isn't it surely better that I keep it public, that I'm saying I got it
Yeah.
wrong in public rather than just
Uh-huh.
delete it," kind of thing, but they hate women as well, so it was very painful having to do it, but I was wrong, and I'm a big believer that when you're wrong, you have to say it. I guess,
Yeah.
yeah, psychologically, you'll know more about this than me. I think there's something really difficult for people, isn't it?
I think so, and I think I'm trying to think of times when I've changed my mind, and I think it's over time. You just kinda like it kind of perforates through you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you go, "Oh, actually, I can see that in a different way now."
Yeah,
Because there's
yeah,
been time between what happened and now,
yeah,
but it's
yeah.
it's not easy to change your mind,
No, and I
especially
think
if
you
you're
also
very passionate about it.
yeah, I think you need evidence as well, don't you? So I know that, a few years ago, I feel sort of embarrassed that I was so late to the party with the gender ideology stuff. I even got told off for saying late to the party, even though that's a turn of phrase. But, what I mean is I should have, I was
Who
still
told
at
you
the
off for
stage.
that?
Some people were saying, "Yeah, it's disgusting that you're calling it a party." Well, it's just a turn of
Ugh,
phrase,
it's a
like,
yeah.
but I think we have to be generous with people, like, that
Mhm.
it's just tiresome, isn't it? Policing your own language and policing other people's language all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel embarrassed really that I didn't. I was probably a year ago, a year and a half ago. I was still kind of thinking that these were men who were like transvestites. They just
Yeah.
like wearing women's clothes, kind of whatever. Yeah, I hadn't twigged. I'd been busy building my business and I was just having
That's
my
the
mind on
thing,
other
you
things,
you
but
are
I didn't
focused on
realise.
other stuff.
But as soon as I did, like, and as soon as I realised what a hornet's nest it was, I didn't speak straight away, but I read all the books, I watched all the
Mhm.
podcasts, listened to all the podcasts, I read and listened to everything I could get my hands on. And it, like you said, it was just like a kind of like, I think there's usually a peaking moment. I can't really remember what
Yeah.
mine was, but
Yeah.
like it was just this gradual kind of like, no, this isn't right, this isn't right. And I was building all that evidence. And I feel like there's something quite healthy about that as well, actually, because
Yeah.
if we're trying to bully people to see our point of view, it doesn't work, does it? Like,
No.
I think people have to come to that conclusion for themselves.
Yeah, I think I was the same, because I'll say that I started really taking notice I think it was towards the end of 2022, but I'd had lots of information before that. And it wasn't until January 2023 when I went to Let Women Speak and got piled on that I realised how toxic it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've seen loads of stuff going back to 2009, and actually before that, 2009, I had a big bloke in my office telling us how his breasts were all his. Like all the actions, which I'm not going to
Right.
do, telling me the whole playbook that we know what they're trying to do now. And it was about, trying to get young people in early so that they could pass, and telling me all about someone who's gay or lesbian, but if they change sex, then you know what I mean? And all the different combinations. And my head was just like, but then if I think about before that, I used to volunteer, and I remember going to this party, talking of parties, and
It's
it was,
sensitive. Don't say party.
I think it was for Christmas, or it was some sort of event. It was a celebration in Newcastle, and I remember I was with a load of other volunteers. So when would that have been? Early 2000s, I think. And then there was loads of people dancing at one point. And then like amongst all these women was these men who were a lot taller. And they just stood out like a sore thumb because they were dancing with these women, but they were like head and shoulders above everybody else. They were wearing dresses, and everyone I was with was like sniggering at them, and I was like really uncomfortable because I knew you shouldn't really laugh at people, but they found it hilarious. And then there's been loads of incidents where I've met people who said they were trans, people who've applied for jobs with me. There was one particular person who applied for a job with me who absolutely did a rubbish interview and then had a tantrum when he didn't get the job. And he was convinced that it was because of his being trans, because he got all the jobs before he was trans. And I was just like, it's not that at all. But he had a massive tantrum. So I've seen all this behaviour. And then the lockdowns happened, and I started going to London with a friend whose daughter was transitioning, and she was going to get a double mastectomy on the NHS during the middle of lockdown when my friend needed a hysterectomy and couldn't get one. And so she was telling me all about that. So like it was a slow build up with information before I actually finally started going, what on earth is this?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's like that for a lot of people, isn't it? And then there's just usually a few things that just make you think.
And then there's more and more people going, well, my child's trans as well. It's like, well, what's going on? And it wasn't
Yeah.
until much later that I went, oh, that guy who came into my office and told me the whole playbook. That's what he was telling me. This is what's happening. Oh my God. They had a
Yeah.
plan. They did it on
It's
purpose.
scary. Yeah. It's frightening. Yeah. And frightening that it's so clever that I mean, I feel embarrassed that it took me so long to realise, and that I was probably still in that kind of like, oh, live and let live, be
And you'd hear
kind,
the
let
odd
people,
voice,
yeah,
wouldn't you? Like
yeah,
through the social media, you'd see someone challenging it and think, oh, yeah, that sounds bad. But I don't think, it's like the slow
feel
drip
like
and
it was,
tap.
or it didn't feel like it was like
It felt
enough of a
fringe, didn't
problem.
it?
It wasn't going to happen in your gym. It wasn't going to happen in your kid's
It's like
school. It
really
wasn't going to happen.
rare
Yeah, 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 yeah.
until I
And I think
realised it wasn't.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Nightmare times.
So you've had your Instagram account. That's just awful because you use that to get business, and it was quite a big account,
Yeah.
and it's
So
just gone.
yeah. So what happened is I published this video saying I didn't like the phrase pregnant people. And it was actually in the context of marketing. I was talking about a marketing, we call it repel and attract. So I'd listened to this podcast where in the first sentence she'd said something like, in this podcast series, we're going to be looking at the impact of something on maternal health. What was it? The impact of something or other on pregnant people, and then used maternal health in the same sentence. And I was like, what? And I love this podcast. And I was like, I can't listen to this anymore. I turned it off. And so I was just talking about that. But I was making the point that for some people, they would find that inclusive language. Well, you'd think like I'd like shot someone or something.
Mhm.
That you're a disgusting human being. You disgust me, like, clients, public say, I
But
never
like
have
even the
anything
way
to do
you've
with
put
you.
that across, you couldn't have been more balanced.
Well, exactly. Yeah. I wasn't saying I don't acknowledge other people think differently. I was just saying this is how I feel about it, because I'm a woman so back then I've had lots of problems having children. I've only got one, not out of choice. I had miscarriages, ectopic pregnancy, I had a very premature birth. Like, I feel like I really know what it is to be a woman. Now I've had breast cancer as well, just to add to the and before someone says, "Well, men get it too." Yeah, but it's a 99%, even getting breast
It's
cancer was
so rare,
annoying
isn't it?
because, it wasn't long before people were policing me and reminding me that men get it too. Yes, they do, but it is 99% of women. So, we don't need to be changing signage or leaflet. Obviously it's important that we let people know that men get it too. I knew that anyway before I got it, but it is a majority. The policy shouldn't be built. There was something come out recently, actually, a report, I think it was from Italy or something, which was, the title of it was like, breast cancer care should be centered around transgender people or something, or prioritized. Transgender people should be prioritized. And it was talking about the fact that, like, I mean, the whole of it is just bad anyway. But, like when you go to breast care, it's not true in my hospital, but when you go to the breast care departments, apparently sometimes they're pink and, they have the pink ribbon and stuff like that. Well, and so that might be upsetting to men to have a pink ribbon or something, this kind of ridiculous stuff. Or, apparently we need to change all of the literature because 1% of men get it, instead of just saying, adding on, and by the way, men do get this too, and making
Hmm.
sure that, that doctors and medics are educating people about that. That's really, really important. So I think I've lost my threads. Yeah, so I was very much of, I don't like that kind of, language. I don't like ovary havers, egg carriers, all. I just think it's
It's just
rubbish.
awful.
I subsequently said, for quite following this, I thought pronouns were silly, and I'd always thought they were silly. That was awful.
Ooh,
That was almost as bad as
that was
saying
a
pregnant people.
terrible
And I was
thing to
like,
say.
doesn't everyone think pronouns are silly? Like, ridiculous, and like
Do you know what?
grammatically they make no sense.
I had a really strong reaction to pronouns even before I knew that this was really bad. It's like, why
Yeah,
do you need to put your pronouns on? You can tell you're a woman by looking
yeah,
at
and
you.
if there was any reason, like sometimes people have, maybe people who aren't from the UK, and they might have a name that's
Yeah,
more difficult to pronounce, and sometimes they might do something, they might actually phonetically spell it out like it's helpful.
yeah,
But you don't do that. I don't do that for Janet, because like it's a common enough name. You don't do it for
yeah.
Kelly. It's like, but I can sort of see if there's a problem why you might want to kind of prompt people, and if it's annoying, everyone says your name wrong, or they ask you how to say it, whatever, like, but we've got people putting pronouns in their bio who quite clearly are a man or a woman, and there's no way anyone's going to get it wrong or whatever. And even if they did, would it be the end of the world?
No.
Like, I'm sure we'd all live if like someone.
Some people have a name like Chris or Sam, and that can be for either.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Sometimes it's confusing if you don't know who you're talking to, or you're dealing with. You get
yeah,
over it, don't you? But then, like, I've come across, in the good old days when you used to have to get the jobs paper, the newspaper, to apply for
yeah,
jobs, and it would have a name of who to write to.
yeah.
Then you'd have to write a letter very formally, Mr. or Mrs. or Ms. or whatever.
Mm.
And if they didn't spell it out, you didn't know if they were male or female, and that was a
Yeah,
problem.
yeah,
I remember that being a problem, but like,
yeah.
but now you just use someone's name, don't you? Dear so and so, dear Chris,
Yeah, yeah,
dear.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And unless
it's
there's,
a bit less
genuine,
formal now.
yeah, and unless there's genuinely a reason why, people are going to get confused, there's no need for me to say she, her. Like, I don't think anyone's going to look at this video and think, oh, she's not a woman. It just reminds me, actually, I don't know if you saw yesterday, that Maya Forstater did an interview with, debate with Peter Tatchell, and he was saying to her, like, you just cannot believe it. Like,
I know.
well, Maya, you're clearly, your gender identity is a woman because you've chosen to wear makeup
Makeup.
and women's like, typical sort of dress. And she's like, Peter, I put this makeup on 10 minutes ago. Like, did that mean I wasn't a woman before I put this makeup on? Like, don't be so ridiculous.
Hmm.
But I feel like that's, yes, there are women in the world who want to dress more masculine or whatever. Good for them. We can usually tell we're women like 9 times out of 10. And if there's, it's just a
I
whole
don't
load of.
think like, even when it's really difficult to tell whether someone's a man or a woman because of it's a picture, you get some more pictures or you see them in real life and you can tell straight away.
Exactly, yeah.
Or
Yeah,
if they
as soon as you
walk
see
or the
someone.
talk or the
Yeah.
move, you can tell.
Yeah, you can just tell, can't you? And even sort of people's like facial structure, and you can just tell. Like, they've done studies, haven't they, that even children, babies can tell the
Yeah.
difference. So it's just, the whole thing's just ridiculous. So yeah, so then so basically I published this video. There was a little bit of pushback to start off with. I think then I might have said pronouns were silly. That obviously caused more havoc. And then people were just going off onto different social media platforms and making, posts about me, mostly not naming me, but identifying me. And I used to be a journalist, so I know my media law, and most of them I, I chal- I tackled them head on. And, people get very upset about this, but like I would go and get someone to send me a screenshot of it and go, hey, look what someone's written about me. And they'd be like, that's terrible. Like, so you publish something publicly on the internet about somebody where you're encouraging somebody to call them a Nazi, a bigot, a transphobe, far right, and all the rest of it. And then you're upset that somebody that I've become aware of this, even though you've blocked me and that I'm sharing it. How terrible is that? This thing that you publish publicly, that I'm just reflecting it back to you. But the most egregious of them was some two podcasters made a podcast about me. I wasn't identified by name, but I was independently identified to just do the legal bit. Numerous people, clients who reached out and said, I think this podcast is about you. I subsequently put in a data subject access request, which supported that. But even in defamation law, it's just the fact that people identified you that's the key. And people were messaging me going, they've made a podcast about you. Very unpleasant, 28 minutes worth. I was compared to individuals who have been accused of doing terrible things, so like convicted rapists, so Russell Brand, Elon Musk, and the Nazi salute incident was mentioned. It was suggested my views were extreme, that I was only saying gender critical stuff for clicks, that it was implied people should probably unfollow me because even just seeing, somebody following someone like me, or I think like Russell Brand, that was where the comparison was made, might make other people think, oh, I don't want anything to do with them. It just went on and on. It was just like 28 minutes of character assassination. So me being me, I called it out, and I sat up late one night and I sent a letter before action asking them to take it down, which I felt was reasonable because I had been identified. And this is relevant. So I got quite an aggressive legal letter back. One of the defences that was cited was free speech. Not admitting liability, but saying, free speech means that you can make any content about any topic you like, that kind of thing. And so, no, when they wouldn't take it down. It's still live now, and this was back in April. Then I sat up late one night and I took the most egregious clips. And I turned them into a little highlight reel, because I didn't realise at first. I thought this was just an audio podcast, and that's bad enough. Then I realised it had been emailed to what I think is thousands of people because of the type of business they have. They're likely to have thousands of subscribers, and I was sent the email that was sent out about this email, which I believe is about me, and was very unpleasant and felt very damaging. Then I realised it was on YouTube, and just like seeing their faces, it was like they started off kind of like, it was like they started off and they wanted to be all professional, like, hey, we're going to make this podcast about how should you share your controversial opinions online, and we're going to show you like how to do it. But it was like they forgot that it was this professional thing, and about a few minutes in, it was just like it felt like a character assassination on me. And it was like they'd forgotten there was a microphone, and that they were in a wine bar or a coffee shop and they were just having a good old bitch about someone. And anyway, so I sat up late one night and I took the most egregious out of all of the clips and I turned it into a little highlight reel. Now, I'm a former journalist, I know my media law, and it's fine to use, it's in my understanding, for the purpose of criticism, to take short clips and to put them out. I didn't doctor them in any way. People could go and look at the original; it's still there, and But I just took what I felt were the most harmful quotes and I shared them on social media. So I basically just reflected back to them what they'd said. It was their words, and actually, I think the kind of people that tend to follow me they tend to be the kind of people that would say that's not nice, but they're not abusive or anything like that. So there would have been a few comments that said, "Oh God, that's not nice," whatever. But they're not abusive, or they wouldn't. I'm not aware of anybody, going after these people or anything. But they were just responding to what they saw, a video that's still in the public domain, and then the copyright complaints started. So I got quite an aggressive copyright letter from their lawyers accusing me of stealing their copyright, which, again, I know my law. I wrote back to myself, and said this is covered under fair dealing. I haven't heard back from them since, and we can get onto the legal part later. But I thought, oh my God, they're going to try and take my Instagram down and maybe my Facebook as well, because you know how it is with social media platforms.
Yeah.
They don't bother to check whether you actually have breached copyright law. They just know they've had a lot of complaints. And so initially I was on it straight away. So every complaint I got, and because I put it on multiple platforms, they were going around to each platform and obviously try making complaints. I would put in an appeal, but then I got diagnosed with breast cancer and my mind was a bit, obviously understandably a bit distracted. And I was very public about, I have been very public about sharing about that and my treatment. And then I missed one. So I missed one of these complaints and I normally would have been on it, appealing it straight away. I missed one. Then my account got suspended and then it got taken down. So this account is like 13,000 followers, which may not sound like a lot to other people, but for me,
No,
it
that's
was like a
huge.
key sales channel for my business. It took me 8 years to build it. It's not easy to build like it's actually smaller than some of my other platforms, but it was just a really effective platform. And I just couldn't believe it. And at that stage, initially I did look into taking legal action. And I'd had some people who'd reached out to me and said that they would be interested in representing me. And so I'd been talking to them. But when I got diagnosed with breast cancer, when you have that thing and you're just like, do you know what? Like,
Can't
life's
think
too
straight.
short. Like,
Yeah.
I just couldn't think straight. And actually, somebody kept chasing me to send some my updated legal case summary to them. And I was just like, I kind of ignored them for a bit because I was just a bit like, I can't deal with this. But then when they had my Instagram taken down, it was like something, well, I should say, to be legally safe, I should say, the copyright complaints were made by the same people who made the podcast. Um, you know, it's my understanding that
Have you got
that
proof of
because
that as well?
yes, so I've got screenshots, with the email addresses and the business name that it was the same people who made this podcast, which I believe is defamatory, also made the complaints that led to my Instagram account being taken down, just to be like legally safe. And so I think it would be reasonable to kind of make a link between the two. And for me, it was just a step too far because I just kind of thought to myself, you know, you must know, surely in your heart of hearts, you must know that it's not right to say somebody's extreme for not liking the phrase pregnant people and then for just defending women's rights to single. Surely you
But
must
as
know that.
well, they would know that you were going through breast cancer diagnosis
Yes,
at that time
I
as
feel quite
well.
sure. I feel quite sure someone would have told them. The copyright complaints actually started again because there were a few. I got this letter. I responded to the letter, and I didn't get a reply from their lawyers. And I would rather suspect because you know fair dealing law is fair dealing law, and I think it comes. It's absolutely fine under those laws. And haven't had any correspondence to suggest otherwise. But yeah, they will know. I'm quite sure someone would have told them. But the copyright complaint started again, and I was so distracted that I did miss the last one, and that was the one that led. It was like I think because I maybe didn't respond quickly. I don't even quite know. You don't know with these platforms, do you? But
Yeah.
when it's gone, when your account's gone, it's gone. And so I'm now having to rebuild, and I've been publishing like a weekly update of. So I've built like 100 followers a week over the last 3 weeks because again, I didn't feel like I had the energy to restart. But I did it a few weeks ago. So now 3 weeks, I'm now on nearly 300 followers and 19 posts. I had think more than 880 posts, and I worked it out last week. It would take me 2.5 years, even if I like grew at that level. So you can imagine the kind of lost my business was turning over like 500,000 almost at one point, and not at. I did change my business model up in the last few years, but my planner launch it was taken down just before I did this annual planner launch, which typically would be upwards of 35 grand, and in the past has been, you know, over the kind of extended period, it's like over 100 grand. I think like it's not nothing. And obviously that account, but particularly 'cause it's very visual, like Instagram's a very visual account. And if you've got a product, it's a great way to show it off. So one of the things I've had to do as part of, so I had decided I wasn't going to pursue legal action. I was going to let it lie. And then I just thought, no, this is not right. It isn't just about me. This is about all the other women that this has happened to,
Yeah.
who have been quietly silenced. Because I'm not going quietly, you see, that's the only difference. Like I share it all and say it as it's happening. And other people I think might feel a bit embarrassed. Like, you know, I don't feel embarrassed that this stuff's been said about me because I know it's not true. And I think it's outrageous. So I just share it and reflect it back at people. But I think a lot of people might doubt themselves or well, I know have gone through this kind of stuff quietly. They just quietly slink away. Maybe they go and get a job or whatever. So I'd had just before that, I'd had a really solid offer from some people who wanted to represent me legally. These things are so slow that the reason I can talk about it so openly at the moment is because the legal proceedings aren't live yet. But I was like, right, okay. So I spent like a whole weekend updating my legal case summary and getting all my evidence together and sending it over. And in the meantime, I'd put in a subject access request because I'm a former journalist. So, it's like which, provided evidence that it was about me and some other things. And it was really unpleasant. It was unpleasant to have to read those kind of things about you and people mocking you behind your back. And there were also other pieces of content made by other people that you start to kind of join the dots and you're like, this is horrible. It's like getting a window on that secret WhatsApp group that, that people have made about something. It's like getting an insight into your bullies, and they will have redacted a lot of it, I'm quite sure. But yeah, I just felt then I couldn't leave it, and not just for me, but for other women who are going through this, because it's not right, is it? It's not right that people can take offense over a phrase or, lawfully held views about stuff we learnt at school, like basic science, and that people are actively destroying people's livelihood. Sorry, I think I've gone off. I've talked for like 15
No, it's
minutes.
fine.
Like, it's like a therapy session, but
It's just ridiculous that someone would be upset that you don't like that phrase. Like, you're not even, it's inconsequential to anything else, isn't it? It's like, it would be like something completely abstract. Like, I'd rather call that a shovel than a spade. Like, do you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. And it's scary that it's women that are doing this, that women are like, I made a video the other day, you might have seen it, so we're recording this, what's the date? So November the 6th, isn't it? So last weekend there were
7th.
protests in London, 99 days after the Supreme Court ruling, like why
Yeah,
are some
yeah.
organisations and companies still not
No.
implemented what they should have had in place all along? And there were counter protests. And I was watching all of these videos like come through, which somebody pointed out, many of them were made by men who got along to these protests and had interviewed some of these like
Yeah.
trans activists who are really crazy. And I was like looking at all the videos. I was thinking, what I want to do is like make a little highlight reel, just a minute long, just to take some of the most like concerning quotes from like some of these anti women's rights protesters. And I put it out the other day. It's had so much traction. It's still on my Instagram now. I've pinned it to the top of my feed, not my Instagram, my it's on my Instagram as well, but I don't have many followers there now. Not that I'm bitter or anything, but off on X. And I was just thinking to myself, we need people to see who it is that they're saying it's okay to come in their spaces. So like one of the guys, so I clipped it and cut out the bits that were the most kind of like,
Yeah.
and the first one he says that he's
Sarah Jane Baker, isn't it? One of them.
Yeah, Alan, was it?
Alan
Yeah,
Baker,
so
yeah.
Alan, yeah. So Alan, who says, I was in prison and I cut off my own balls and I ate them. And then at one point he says, yeah, I am mentally ill. Like, I didn't say I wasn't mentally ill. Right. Then there was our friend Sophie Molly.
Yes.
It's a nice clip of him saying, I am a woman. Nobody's going to stop me going to women's toilets because I am a woman and no ruling will stop me. Then there's the famous clip of him, like, calling for J.K. Rowling to be shat on and calling for violence against that. And so I just put together this clip of like there was the guy who said he was a trans Muslim something or other, built like a brick shit house, like massive bloke who you can see women like in this video behind him. Like, I'm 5'3". I don't know how big he is, but like he's massive. Like I imagine I would be like a little dot, like next to him. He's like so broad and so tall, and then going free Palestine, inshallah, whatever. And just like people need to see this because these people, they're not well. And I've had a bit of flack online as well because I say these people aren't well, right? They're mentally ill. And then someone will come along and say, but actually they're all sexual perverts, they've got autogynephilia. And I was like, look, most of the people in my life, they don't know what autogynephilia is. They've never heard of it. They don't know what a TERF is. They don't know what gender critical is, but they do know,
What?
and they don't mind saying
Mentally
it.
ill.
They
Yeah.
do. They can spot somebody whose behaviour is disordered and mentally ill, and they've had to deal with people like that in their lives, and they've had to probably at times create boundaries with those people in their lives, you know, to protect the person and the people around them. And I think sometimes women's rights campaigns can get a bit bogged down in kind of like wanting everybody to understand the kind of like deep cycle. But actually, no,
Yeah.
these people are just really ill. And when somebody's really ill, they can be dangerous, can't they? You know, like
Yeah.
that guy. Oh yeah, the guy, Alan. He says at the end, he says, "What were you in prison for 30 years?" "Oh, I kidnapped someone and I tortured them for 3 days." Like, you know, these are the people that people are telling us to be kind and
Wasn't he in for
to,
murder though? He didn't just
yeah, I
torture
think
him. He murdered the
just
person.
maybe did he murder someone as well? Maybe it
I
was
think
just
no.
torture, you know.
I think that was the same because I've heard of him before, and I think he tortured them then murdered them.
And then murdered them. Maybe you missed that bit out. But these are the
Now I'm
people.
doubting myself. Maybe he didn't. I don't know.
Okay, well, just
It's
for
bad
legal
anyway.
reasons, you need to say, I'm not sure about that actually. Maybe I'll need to go and check that. But we know he definitely said on record, on camera, he says, I kidnapped once someone, tortured them for 3 days. And these are the people that people are kind of like, oh, be kind, ladies. Like, and what a lot of people I think can't understand is that saying that doesn't mean that you think like there's someone that I know. I'm trying to think how to say it to be diplomatic. Someone that I know there's a sort of link to my family who says they're a woman and they're living their life as a woman or whatever you say. Overtly, they don't seem to present any risks. They seem to be getting on with their life as long as they're not in the ladies' loo, whatever. But I think a lot of the key thing most people miss is if we say yes to that person who seems very nice and inoffensive, whatever, one, they might not be, but anyway, even if they are, we can't say, get
Not
Alan out.
everyone else.
We can't get Rose. We can't get the guy who kidnapped someone and tortured them for 3 days, just, you know, and ate his own balls. Because people are saying, but no, you know, he's a woman. We can't get Rose. The Darlington nurses, like Rose case, is just like,
Yeah.
you know, we can't get a man who.
It was the bit where he said that he had to wear boxer shorts because he had that kind of anatomy.
Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
like,
In other words, you've got a penis. I got into a conversation with someone on X the other day who said, I don't know what your problem is. She's very polite about it. She said, I don't know what your problem is because at my gym, we have had men who say they're women who come in. They're very courteous and they hide their private parts. And I just said to her, courtesy is not hiding your private parts.
courtesy's not coming in.
Courtesy is not staying out of the women's, you know, that's courteous, you know, coming in and like turning away so people don't see you willy. And so I ended up saying to her, I said, look, you know, just because I've met people who I can't imagine in a million years would come and start waving their willy around in a changing room. They may never do that. They may never pose a risk to anyone, but that isn't the point. The point is that, you know, 26 nurses made a complaint about one man who was behaving weirdly, who, you know, was hanging around in his holy boxer shorts and saying, oh, well, you got changed yet? And talking about getting his, allegedly, we should say, talking about getting his girlfriend pregnant. Like, 26 women have had to take a petition to Parliament and take legal action and probably had untold mental distress because of one man. That's how powerful all of this is, and the fact that you've got people. But to get back to my original point, so I've got off this, but making that video is just like, we don't need to get into into all the psychology of it. Like, just show them a video of some of those people and say, do you want your mum or your sister or
Absolutely.
your daughter to feel they have to share a space, like, you know, or they might lose their job if they don't let Alan, ball-eating Alan,
because
in
this
there.
is what we've been doing for the last 10, 15, 20 years. We've been lowering the boundaries of young girls. And not
Yeah,
just with
yeah.
this, it's with like, with like dangerous men as well. Not just trans, it's like the immigration stuff as well. Oh, it's fine. Diversity's our strength. But actually, some of
Yeah,
the people some of the men who are coming from other cultures, they don't treat women very well over there and they
no.
don't change
No,
when they
no,
come here. And I think when we're not allowed to say stuff like that.
no. And we know we're also coming off the back of the scandal, the grooming scandal or the rape scandal, to call it what it is, which has been hushed up, which has been
Yep.
brushed under the carpet, where people have put their own personal reputations or their own personal agendas above like the safety of women and girls, and that's and again, women have been part of that as
Uh-huh.
well, of suppressing that. I said to someone the other day, it was Jimmy Savile's the anniversary of his death the other day, and I think it was like day 5 or something of the Darlington nurses trial, and again, I was getting so I get so wound up because it was just like, so we all think, so we'd all agree that like Jimmy Savile's like awful. So he was, using his celebrity status, he was using the fact that he was an influential man to access vulnerable people in a hospital setting. Now, and when we talk about like the Darlington nurses, obviously there's the safety of those women, but it's also a bloody hospital
I
with like
know. The
vulnerable
patients.
sick people and old people, like children, whatever. And I don't think I've even heard anyone talk about that, about the
I
fact
think I
that
have. I think I heard one of the nurses saying that
I'm glad.
they don't allow that for patients, so why do we have to put up with it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
you
at
wouldn't,
least
if a
they're
patient,
looking after the patients, but that's still not good enough.
but, I imagine Jill Foster, I think I was talking about it on Twitter, and Jill Foster said, well, we all know that, like, if Jimmy Savile would be around now and he called himself, like, Jenny Savile or whatever, that the same people who have covered this up and have,
Yeah.
promoted these ideologies would be covering up for Jenny Savile,
Hmm.
Again, that's not to say that anyone who dresses a woman or whatever is a predator. It's not to say that at all. That's often a tactic that's used to try and get you to shut up, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
because you're not saying that. What you're saying is that in order to safeguard women and girls, we have to say no, no man at all. Whatever he
yeah.
says, no matter how many surgeries, no matter how nice he is or whatever. No, the answer just has to be no. And the fact even that it's still after the Supreme Court ruling, like we're still having these conversations and these men are still thinking that they have a right and pushing it, and there's the whole thing about, good men to stay out, don't they?
Yeah,
Good men stay out. It's
yeah.
that simple.
Hmm. Yeah. It's it's really highlighting a lot of other things that we've allowed to happen in our society as well. Like, these mixed sex changing villages. They're so dangerous. And we
Mm.
know that, but yet they're still happening. And why is that? Why can't we say no to that?
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
so someone I know, I used to work for in a water park, and they had a mixed sex changing village, and the police were never away from the place because there was men drilling holes into the walls and all
Mhm.
sorts, so they could peep through. It was just awful,
Mm. Yeah, yeah.
and
I just feel,
that was like 30 years ago.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's almost like they've created a way for, it's like a new way for men to prey on women and children.
Yeah, and yet they come out and say that violence against women and girls is going through the roof, but then they won't say why. They won't name
Yeah,
any
yeah,
of these things that we know
yeah,
is happening.
yeah, yeah. No, it's quite staggering, and like I say, the fact that you've got women who cannot see it, mothers, like I always just think to myself, if you have a female child, like surely you can see that, if you have a sister, if you have a wife, like surely you can see it, but that's some of the astounding things, isn't it? It's like that.
I think it's in women's biology though. It's about the survival thing. It's the fawn response because
Yeah,
in order to get anywhere in society, they have to be on side with men, and that's like an
yeah,
evolutionary thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I have found myself wondering. You asked earlier on about, do you think there's some reason why some people get targeted more than others? And I think that as a woman, and you might say the same about yourself, is I think I'm more like male left-brained, although I look female. I'm more kind of like, sort of
Masculine
factual and
energy.
kind of yeah, I think I've got more masculine. I think a lot of the women who get involved in this have got more masculine energy, because you have to stand up to men. Because even nice men will patronise you and try and make you feel small. They don't even realise they're doing it, like they're being, but men can be so vicious to women who challenge them in any way. When I was, like, writing about this the other day, when I was an editor, I used to work mainly for The Guardian, and I used to go in and do, like, go in for, like, 4 weeks at a time and cover for an editor, and the male columnists, some of them were just awful, and the way they spoke to me, it was quite clear. Like, I'd go back and say, "Oh, this is great, thank you. Could you just change X, Y, and Z?" Like, they'd speak to me like I was something on the other end of their shoe, and it was typically white, middle class, well-educated, Oxbridge, public school types, and I think it takes a woman with more masculine energy to take those people on, and I have to admit, sometimes it's not easy even if you are a bit more like that, because that is vicious, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's something about being working class as well. Like, I'm not sure where you draw the line about working class though, because like I would say like if you go back a few generations, then I do come from a working class family, but
Yeah,
you know, I don't live in a council estate anymore. Do you know what I mean? So,
mm,
but it's that background. It's where you're brought up with like that no nonsense, where you have to know the truth. You have to look for the truth, because if you
mm.
don't, you can't survive.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
because you've got
yeah,
less money because it's more forgiving. You're able to
yeah,
sort of skip some of the things that are harmful when you've got a bit more money,
yeah.
a bit more resource.
I definitely think that's true. I mean, there are women, who come from more middle class backgrounds. It would be quite interesting to see, wouldn't it, whether there is something in that. But yeah, I certainly come from a family where, although I sound quite posh now, because well, actually not posh to some people around here. We've said that, so I've got like a North Kent accent, but I come from a family where we're the first generation to own our houses, and my parents both grew up in council houses and left school when they were 14, 15, and I've sort of been elevated, if you like, by education, but I still haven't lost that kind of sense of, yeah, I think you described it well when you talked about, like, you have to have your wits about you,
Yeah,
because the doors, like, when I started wanting to get into journalism, I didn't have an uncle or, a family friend that could get me some work experience. And I was lucky that I lived near to London, so I could manage to do some things,
yeah,
because at least I wasn't having to travel from another part of the country and find somewhere to stay or whatever. I had friends at school or whatever who, if they wanted to get their foot in the door in a particular profession, their mum or dad or, family
yeah,
friend or neighbour would have, like, I didn't know anyone. My dad was a postman and my mum was a nurse, and we had a great upbringing and they're really loving parents, but they couldn't introduce us to anybody.
yeah,
So I had to make my getting into journalism, I had to basically go places where people I wanted to talk to would be. I had to, like, be quite pushy, quite persistent, quite kind of, but I do think perhaps it means that we're less easily duped, like, and taken in by stuff, because, like, I find that people from more working class backgrounds, or maybe it's even more of a blue collar thing. I don't even know what it is, but, like, they're just brilliant, because they just be like, no, that's a bloke. Like,
yeah,
there's no, but I think when you start mixing in more middle class circles, like, I can remember when I first started doing that, more like making a few, like, faux pas or whatever, realizing that you'd said something which is, you don't say that out loud, kind of thing. But I
I
feel
still do
like,
that.
do you know what I mean? For some reason, my Facebook page has really blown up recently. I have no idea why. The kind of
Well,
people who
a lot of
responded
my
to it.
connections I've seen commenting and sharing your stuff, so
Oh, okay. So
yeah,
maybe they're, like, cross or whatever. But, like, my posts are
it's
just
the
going mad. But
turfs.
what's
Yeah,
brilliant
yeah,
is that they're going mad with people who are just like, you know, that's a man. Like, this is just ridiculous. And my sense is that they're people. I think people who are working class, possibly more blue collar professions. There's less pressure, or it could even be certain professions, not necessarily sort of blue collar, white collar, but they just say what they see, and they're like,
Yeah.
"That's not right," you know? "No,
Yeah.
I don't wanna share a changing room with a hairy man who says he's a woman." Like, "No, I'm not doing that." And I really feel we need more of that,
Would do.
rather than insufferable middle class people who are just kind of pandering to whatever's flavour of the month kind of thing. And maybe I'm insufferable. I think maybe I started to become an insufferable middle class person, but I think I've I think
Yeah, but you
I've
haven't
like
forgotten your roots though, when
I
it
haven't forgotten
comes
my roots.
down to it.
But it is hard because there are people that, like I've had a friend from school who I think I posted about this actually, who has just basically is telling me that I'm, like, mentally ill, and just kept messaging me and kind of saying that, like,
You're
it
mentally
isn't
ill because
possible
you
that
can
I
tell what
could
a woman is.
genuinely it isn't possible that I could genuinely just think, "No, this isn't right, and women need separate spaces and their own language and sports and whatever. No, I must be mentally ill." And it got to the point where I kind of blocked them, but I hadn't realized that I'd blocked them on one platform, and they sent me yet another message, and it started like, "I'm not trying to gaslight you, but yes, you are." And then almost threatened me, "If you write about this, then I'll know that you really are mental."
And that's projection, in my opinion.
Yeah, if you write, so I did write about it because I thought, no, I would never identify them. I would never share anything that would, you know, even though it's probably more than they deserve, like some of the messages that they've sent me, I would never want to put somebody in that situation where they had people piling on them. But then I got a message saying like, "Oh, you've defamed me," even though no one apart from me and them would know who it was. Like no one, they wouldn't even guess. And And you just think, and I'm supposed to be the mentally ill one. Like what's going on here? Like it would never even occur to me to reach out to somebody that I, worked with or went to university with or went to school with or whatever, who, this particular person has, I think their views on the environment are a bit bonkers. Would it ever have occurred to me to say no? Because that's okay. If they want to think that, that's no, it's not up to me to message them and try and change their
Convince them.
mind. And I also feel like, it should be okay to be friends with people who have different views from you. Like we should be able to get along. But yeah, it's just I can't remember where that point came from. What were we talking about before that? But yeah, there's people that I've come across. That particular person also accused me of being racist in when all the Black Lives Matter stuff kicked out because I pointed out that there were a lot of white women online who were telling me how I should behave. And I'd completely also missed that people have been writing books about all this and white fragility and all the rest of it. I'd missed this whole kind of whatever. So apparently I was committing some other massive faux pas. But I was just saying what I could see. I was like, well, actually, why are white people telling me? Why are white women telling me what I should be saying or doing? Actually, I'd really rather hear from my friends of colour or whatever is the acceptable thing to say now. But, I'll be more wanting to listen to them and how they felt about things. And, but apparently that was an awful thing to say. And she called me racist back then. I should have seen the signs then, shouldn't I?
Yeah.
It's like, I remember saying to somebody at the time, it's like they've read all the books on the Guardian bookshop. What's the kind of the latest trendy book that everyone should have read? And that's where and that's where they're getting all their views from. Do you know what I mean? Um, well, I have a cat that's trying to break in. I mean, this cat's really insistently trying to get the door open. Sorry, this is not very professional, is it? Right, you might get to see my cat now because having been bashing at the door, he's been
Now
very
doesn't want to
cat-like
come on.
and now not coming in. Right, I think he is coming now. He might sort of jump up now. Yeah. Sorry, where were we?
We're talking about racism.
Yeah, because I didn't know about sorry, I've got to let this cat. I didn't know about intersectional, all of that stuff. I do now,
Yeah.
but apparently it's also racist to not think that men should go in ladies' toilets and changing rooms and prisons and whatever
Yeah, I
as well,
still
isn't it?
don't get
Who
that.
who knew?
Well, you see, the first Let Women Speak that I went to, I was very confused because all the placards were calling us racist, and I just didn't understand because we weren't talking about race at all. We're
Yeah,
talking about men in women's spaces. It just
yeah,
didn't
yeah,
make any
yeah.
sense whatsoever.
Yeah, well, even I was a bit crossed by GB News, who normally, have no problem knowing what a woman is. But a lot of their headlines that they were putting out on social media last week for those protests said, like, trans protests. I was like, "No, these are women's rights protests." Like,
Yeah,
why does everything have to be about trans? Like, why can't it be
yeah,
about women? You know, it's like
yeah,
that's
yeah.
tiresome as well, isn't it? Because every
Mhm.
conversation you try to have about women, it becomes about trans people, and you're like,
Well, watched ITV have been covering the Darlington nurses, and I watched their coverage, and it was the bit where Rose had turned up to court, and they did not say that he was a man. They called him they. They didn't really show, like, they showed the back of him with the long hair, and they said a trans colleague, but they didn't say that he was a man. So anybody who didn't understand what was going on,
mm,
you know, Doris who lives down the road, doesn't know that, like, who's
mm,
80 odd and doesn't understand that all this stuff's happening, she's not going to understand that it's because it's a man. She's going to go, why are they upset that that person's in the changing room? And, like, it
yeah, yeah,
had no context.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, we're speaking today, aren't we, on the day that I can't believe we haven't mentioned this yet. So no one was more pleased than I was. Well, not pleased for her, but just pleased that it was getting some airspace when, the BBC presenter, Martin Croxall, corrected herself live on a news broadcast because they'd put on the auto cue of pregnant
Pregnant
people and she
people.
corrected it to women, quite rightly. So that was back in June. And actually, that was the night before my breast cancer diagnosis. I knew I was going to get my results and I was pretty sure it was gonna be bad news, and so I went on GB News the night before, which was, like, the best thing I could have done because it just, like, totally distracted me from, like, thinking I was gonna get this bad news, which I did get the bad news the following day, but it was a really good distraction. But anyway, yeah, so when I saw everybody talking about that, I got in touch with GB News and said, that if you're looking for somebody to come, I got cancelled for saying pregnant people. Anyway, it's all kicked off in the last few days because the BBC have held up 20 complaints against her, including one about her facial expression.
It's
And
ridiculous.
I've been in a sort of protracted discussion with someone who used to be a client, possibly probably former client now, um, who was saying, but the BBC is supposed to be impartial. So if she hadn't used pregnant people, apparently this was what the person they were quoting said. Turns out actually that wasn't what they said at all. But anyway, she was making the point that this was impartial. If she'd changed what was in the auto cue, that wouldn't be impartial or partial. But I was like, but hang on a minute. Like, this is not, first of all, it's incorrect because pregnant people is just, what is it? What does it mean? Because only women can get pregnant. But secondly, it's an ideological position using pregnant people. Like, women or men is neutral. It's just biology, isn't it? And so she was saying that Martin had editorialized. Like, and I was like, well, no, actually, it's the BBC that done that. The editor who wrote that script for her. And I mean, we may never get to know, but I wouldn't mind betting that there's been some discussion about that in the newsroom and she's pushed back on it
Yeah.
and it's happened anyway. And I wouldn't mind betting that maybe that's been one of a number of discussions, knowing, because I've still got lots of friends who work in journalism, and knowing what they've said about what goes on in their newsrooms, that might have been one of multiple discussions where she's pushed back on certain language. She's just, the facial expression was like, oh, for God's sake, I thought we talked about this. And, hopefully we will get to know, but that's kind of how I read it. But yeah, I was getting a protracted conversation with somebody who was like, but, the BBC's being impartial. And I was like,
They're not the least
no,
impartial
it's the least
organisation I've ever
impartial.
come across.
And there's been a report that's come out this week. It's a really bad timing for the BBC, which has exposed how, and this is something I'd heard informally from friends who still work in journalism, how basically, like BBC staff kind of being bullied, like by young, Gen Z, LGBTQI, whatever the latest editions are, not to run certain stories, almost as if they're like a kind of a filter. It has to
Yeah.
go through our,
And all of
our,
the
our
stories are going to this LGBTQ plus activists, basically.
mm,
That's where all the news is going through.
mm,
So of course they're not going to show the other side. But also they've been exposed for clipping together unrelated parts of Donald Trump's speech
yeah, yeah,
about
yeah,
that Capitol Hill thing, which I remember at the time because I had heard a different version, not on the BBC, and I was talking to someone who must have heard the BBC one. I didn't know at the time that's where they'd got it from, and they were convinced that he had incited that
yeah,
riot,
yeah,
those
yeah.
riots and stuff. I was like, no, he didn't, and she was adamant, and that's really bad. It's so
Yeah,
bad
yeah,
that
and
they've
this is a
done
public
that.
service
I know.
broadcaster.
I have to say, I cancelled my TV licence back in the lockdowns when they said that the hospitals were full of children, and I knew that was false. And that was the final straw. My husband really didn't want us to cancel it because he thought we'd get into loads of trouble. And I just did it. And I said, oh, by the way, I've cancelled the TV licence, and he was really pleased.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, it's just absolutely shocking, isn't it? Because of all of every broadcaster, a public service broadcaster, you would expect to be the one that is, absolutely obsessed with being impartial, with being accurate, with being factual. There's been a big problem in the BBC with them reporting crimes committed by men, like you say, and it
Yeah,
causes
as
confusion,
women.
doesn't it?
Yeah.
Peter Tatchell, to pick on him again, but he was going in that interview yesterday, I think it was him, was going, well, everyone knows what's meant by a trans woman, a trans man. I was like, no, they
They
don't
don't.
actually.
No, they
You know,
don't.
a lot of older people, or whatever, even younger people, like I have to stop and think a lot because I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, trans, like,
It's
and
because of
then
the
some
word
people,
woman.
yeah, and some people say trans identifying now, don't they, and whatever. And I
Yeah,
have to
and
stop, I frequently have to
that
stop and
confuses
think,
me as well. I'm just like, is it a man or a woman?
yeah, man or woman, easy, like we get that. But also, I don't know if you were following the Barbie Kardashian case in Ireland. That's another like really mentally sick, like potentially psychopathic person who's like was in prison for threatening their mother. I think
A woman's
came
prison
out
as
looking
well.
like a cross between Vicky Pollard. It was like a sort of wearing this like pink top with
Like,
these
he's
big
got
like golf
massive lips, hasn't
boobs.
he?
Yeah, yeah, and nothing like a woman whatsoever. Like openly, making threats to women. Paddy O'Gorman did say Gorman, isn't it? O'Gorman rather than Gorman. Paddy O'Gorman did this podcast interview, which I thought was just brilliant, and just openly talking about like, well, I wouldn't actually attack anyone apart from there's like listing people that he would attack, I think including his mother. If I ever see her again, yeah, no, I would, and like threatening to rape people with objects and things like that. And you're like, he was in a women's prison for a while, wasn't he? Like, because Ireland is completely like captured.
Awful.
And you're just like, I think that's been a problem in the Irish media as well, hasn't it? You just kind of think, what is wrong with people? Like, they need their heads testing, don't they? Just like, it's just, yeah, I don't know.
It's really bad. Anyway, do you want to talk about your book to round things off?
Yeah, so I'm turning these
Have
so
you
I had this.
managed? You know how you've lost your Instagram account? I'm dying to ask you. Have you lost all the quotes from there? Or have you got them on like Canva or something as well?
I've got them all on my phone.
Good.
I'm going to have to go back through. So basically,
Yeah.
I got actually the people who made the lovely podcast about me. They mocked this in the subject. The fact that I screenshot everything and was sharing screenshots because that's a terrible thing to do is to keep evidence of what people say about you and other people or whatever. But yeah, so I had them organised in my highlights so people could just kind of flip through them. But now I'm going to have to go through my phone. And what I'm going to do, so I had this idea really pretty much straight away as soon as I started getting the messages, but because most of them had the phrase "please don't share my name" in them, so most of the messages would say, "This is what I'm experiencing," or "This is what I've experienced," or "This is what I'm afraid of," "This is why I'm not speaking up. Please don't share my name." And I think while it's really important that we hear, the Maya Forstaters, we hear the Graham Linehans, we hear the for Women in Scotland, we hear like it's so important that these J.K. Rowling, like that
Yeah.
we hear these stories. But I also think there's so many untold stories that we may never get to hear. Like for example, I got an email this week from someone who has been doxxed, and they're a domestic abuse survivor themselves, and they commented on a publicly on social media post expressing gender critical views, and they published. I went and took screenshots for them, and they named their employer, referenced the CEO, said we're taking screenshots, and like terrified they're going to lose their job. Any income in the household, has more reason than the next person to really not want to share spaces with men or want their child to. And a lot of these stories will probably never come out. So what I'd really like to do is to tell these stories in the book. So what I think I'm going to do first is to put I've got all these screenshots, but actually to put a call out to people who also might have stories. So it feels like a bit of a job. But I do have a buy me a coffee link, which if you wouldn't mind sharing, if anyone wants
Yeah.
to thinks this is a good idea. I'm the kind of person that I need to do things quickly. If I spend too long, so I really want to try and just crack on with it now. I'm having like radiotherapy next month, and that will be hopefully the last part of my breast cancer treatment. So lucky it was early and treatable, but it's still taken up like, the best part of a year. But I've not been able to work full time on top of being cancelled, which has been a nightmare. And then I need to rebuild. But yeah, if anyone, wants to support the project, and I'm just thinking about how to do it at the moment, but I may well sort of do it as a Substack and publish things as I go or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but I need to give that a bit of
And
thought.
can people
But
still buy
yeah.
your planner as well, or is it
Yeah.
past time?
No, so I've got my Courageous planner. In fact, I've got a prototype here. Hang on just a second while I just get it. This is a prototype of this year's, but basically because my business was just absolutely decimated by what anyone will tell you who's been cancelled, is that you can't just like, I remember someone in my family saying to me, well, can't you just like stop saying what you're saying, and then can't you just like go back to normal as if
As if
nothing's
that
happened? You
would do
can't.
anything.
I know, you just can't. So I've been
No?
selling this planner, which I'm trying to show a little bit here. It's an A4 desk planner, and typically it's been business owners, but creators. And now actually I've given it more of a sort of for campaigners and fundraisers this year. But basically I've had to something that I've been selling for like, this is my 9th year. I've had to kind of repackage it and like, turn it into something new. So it's the Courageous planner. It's a lovely A4 desk planner. And I did it in suffragette colours this year. So there's 4 designs. And you can still grab one, and I can give you if there's any left when this goes out, I can give you a discount code for listeners to your podcast as well. But that would be a great way to support as well. I just did a big pre-order to try and generate a bit of funds to help me get started on this book, and earn some money, which is something I haven't really been able to do much this year. So, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, so great. So if you send me the links to all those things and the code, if you want us to put it in the description, I can do that. But thank
Brilliant.
you so much for coming back on my podcast. It's been lovely
No,
talking
thank
to
you for
you.
having me. Thank you.
You're welcome. A massive percentage of people watching this channel are not subscribed. That's 86.5% of watchers are not subscribed to the channel. Please subscribe. It helps us to get more guests and reach more people who need help, and to make sure that women know that they are not alone. I just wanted to take a moment to speak directly to the women listening who might be struggling in silence. So maybe you're living with the fallout of a husband or partner who's suddenly decided he's a woman, leaving you feeling confused, coerced, or even pressured into things you never consented to. Maybe you're a mother with a daughter or a son who now says they're trans, and you're carrying the heartbreak of that loss without anyone around you really understanding. Or maybe you've been cancelled, silenced, or bullied in your workplace, in your family, or even online, and you're left questioning your reality, your confidence, and your sense of self. If any of that sounds familiar, I just want you to know that you're not alone, and you don't have to keep pushing through it on your own strength, because that's exactly why I offer counselling for women. It's a private, safe, and non-judgmental space where you can say the unsayable. And I know how hard it can be to put words to feelings of betrayal, grief, or anger, especially when the world around you just wants you to be quiet. In our sessions, you'll be heard, believed, and supported without judgment. My work is grounded in person-centred counselling, but I also bring in other tools like inner child work, trauma-informed approaches, and relational models to help you uncover what's really going on beneath the surface. Together we'll explore how the past is shaping the present, untangle the dynamics of coercive or narcissistic relationships, and give you space to grieve losses that others might dismiss or deny. The women that I work with often tell me that our sessions give them clarity, strength, and the ability to start making decisions that honour their own needs, sometimes for the first time in years. And so whether you're trying to rebuild after coercion, come to terms with ambiguous loss, or simply reconnect with who you are, therapy can be the place where you start to feel like yourself again. And I offer a free, no obligation consultation so that you can see if working together feels like the right fit. There's no pressure, just a chance to talk about what you need and how I might be able to help. You can find out more at kellyoliverdougall.co.uk. You deserve a space where you are truly heard, and if this speaks to you, I'd be honoured to walk alongside you on your journey of healing and strength.